Remember to go in and add your name that you're here. And let's see. And the leadership would like to know that you're here the whole time, and I'm not monitoring. So when you come in and leave in the app, when you leave, if you have to leave early, that's okay, because sometimes we do. So check in and check out, okay? So they can see, and I'm printing off the chat conversation every day. So then we know what's going on and who's here, okay? All right, so let's share the screen here. All right, so then again, we want to, okay, you guys see that? So we want to again talk about when you're doing your, so some of you haven't finished your homework. So your buyer's package, you want to go through here. And some of you did do this part, but you haven't done the remainder. And you need to do that and send it to Falls Church and Fredericksburg. You're going to send it to Shannon, but copy me on it so I know that it's been done. And then Alexandria, you're going to send it to me, either through command and just make me as, you know, someone who receives a copy. Okay, then let's see. Okay, now the listing package, that's going to be your homework. Now, some of these documents are going to look the same. So coming up, for those who haven't done the listing, then for Thursday, you need to do all of the documents here for Thursday, okay? Now, by then, we're going to have gone through the listing package, so it shouldn't be a surprise. For those who gave a stab at it, then some of the things that maybe didn't make sense will make sense again, you know, now. Now, I do want to go over again with, so let me go to the listing package. And let's see. I want to talk about okay, here also, make sure you're using this document. See here where it's page 1. So this what goes on the broker's information page, page 1. And then below the line on the back page, this is what goes there. And it's broken down by each office, okay? So there were a few mistakes of that, and some of it's because of the way command treats those fields as autofill fields. Say that 3 times fast. So anyway, so what the suggestion from Shannon is that fill out the page 1 for its accuracy. And then when you go into DocuSign for the signature setup, you can bring over a text box on the below the line there, and instead of KW United, then you would put in Shannon or Angela's name, and then you, under the email address, then you would do the same. Yes, we're fighting mosquitoes here. Yeah, I called them to come over and do something. They were here earlier. I got bit like 4 times when I got here. Debbie's like, oh, you guys can come over here. Well, I know that conference room over there is usually hot. I'm like, no, thank you. I'll stay over here where it's cooler with the mosquitoes. Okay. So here's what I was talking about here on your buyer and seller agreements. It's going to auto-populate here. It's going to say KW United. So in DocuSign, you can drag over a text box next to it and then put in your broker's name. And same with email address, either underneath or next to it. It doesn't matter. But just put in their direct email address so that people can reach them directly. All right. And also remember to have your client sign the this document on page 4. Just have them put their initials there. I saw that was missed on several places for people. So you guys should be acting as the buyer or the seller and filling out the information. So I forgot my notebook. So can someone tell me what paragraph we left off on Friday?
We were at homeowner's warranty because I think we had gotten down to.
Okay, so we're here on paragraph 7. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think we'd gone that far, but I wanted to double check.
We went through all the items and then the as-is items and
Okay.
as marketing. We're right there.
Perfect. So we are on page 25. Tuesday, Thursday. Oh, Friday, I meant Thursday. Okay, it all blends together for me. Okay. On Thursday, not last Friday, Thursday. It's Tuesday, Thursday. Well, Friday, I felt like I was teaching boot camp because I had a lot of calls from people, which is great. And I love it. I was doing a lot of boot camp teaching. It wasn't with you guys necessarily. It was with other people who were actually in the mix of writing offers and stuff. So it felt like a boot camp day. Okay, so, all right, so homeowner's warranty. Our office has affiliates with different homeowner warranty companies, whether it's a 210, a Choice. HMS is now called Cinch. Those are the top 3. I don't know our office here at Falls Church. We've had a long-standing relationship with Cinch, but I think some of the others, some of agents use different companies, and there's nothing wrong. It's what you and your client are doing. So, but whatever it is that you want to find out, you want to look at the warranty, and you're taking a listing. So if your seller, for example, you're offering them to, it says the seller has the option to purchase a home warranty, which can be in effect during the listing period and will transfer to the buyer upon settlement. Seller should review the scope of coverage, exclusions, and limitations. So basically, a buyer's warranty covers in most cases, the HVAC, okay? But a seller's warranty does not cover it. At the buyer's warranty fee, it's an extra fee. So if your seller wants that extra coverage on their home during the time of the listing, it might be an older system, it's getting older, whatever, then they want to make sure they pay for that. So you put in here, what's the cost of the warranty, look at the charges, and who's it going to be provided by, okay? So then when you enter this into your multiple listing system, there's a home warranty being offered to the buyer, okay? And that's part of your marketing. Some of the warranty companies have riders you can put out or whatever, but you certainly want to make sure it's, hello, Raekwon, you made it. Do you mind shutting that door and then just unlock it too in case someone else shows up? Thanks. All right, so the home warranty. And Raekwon, we're on page 25 when you get settled. So, check with your seller, but don't just gloss over this. Now you think, oh, well, it's a seller's market, blah, blah, blah. And it may be, but if you're getting 5 to 6%, some agents will use this as an incentive to their seller and they'll purchase it for them. So that's a decision you make as a business person. And if you decide to do that, that's part of your business plan. If you're gonna buy one for everyone, or you might be buying home warranties for all teachers because you used to be a teacher, or all firemen because you used to be a fireman type thing. Just make that part of your business plan. And then when we get down to the bottom of the listing agreement, there's a blank paragraph that we can add that information to. Okay, utilities, check all that apply. So your client should know if their hot water is by oil, gas, or electric, okay? What bill do they pay, okay? Who do they pay their bill to? And oil out in the country, we have, they have oil out there. There could be oil in here. You could have hot water that's electric. You could have heat that's electric, but it's through radiators or water. So you really need to talk to the client to find out what type of heat they have So first it's what the fuel is and then what type it is, okay? So you've got the water, the air conditioning, the heating, and then the water supply. Is it public, private, or community well? Private well means it's a well that serves one family. A community well can serve 2 or more families, okay? And then you got the sewage. Is it a public sewage, which means the word sewer, okay? I find this is a mistake often with new agents. They put public septic and it's really public sewer when it's a pipe connected to a public sewage system, okay? You can have public septic because the whole neighborhood is on a septic system. You know, these out in the country, they may have these little neighborhoods that are on a neighborhood septic system, okay? So it can be public septic. When it's a private septic, then you want to find out how many bedrooms it's approved for. So a rule of thumb is for every bedroom can usually house 2 people. But basically a 70 square foot bedroom is supposed to house 1 person. A 100 square foot bedroom is allowed to house 2 people. And did you get it? I'm sorry, we're fighting mosquitoes in here. Do you guys want to move next door? Okay. Okay, sorry. So anyway, the thing to remember, and so a 100 square foot bedroom generally houses 2 people, 153 people. And whereas when you're buying a home, people don't necessarily think about that when they're putting family members in a bedroom. But when you're dealing with like in a rental, for example, and you're dealing with Section 8 housing or public assisted housing, that's where that really comes into play. Because they'll say, oh, that bedroom's only X amount of square feet, only one of the children can be in that room. So that's kind of where that comes into play. But so when you're looking at how many people does the house support, how many bedrooms are there, and if you had 1 or 2 people in each bedroom, will the house support that many people? So generally when they say 4 bedrooms, they're thinking really 8 people basically, okay? Unless it says otherwise, okay? And that depends on the size and the functionality of the septic system itself. So when the person bought it, they should have been told that, and then they can certainly always have someone come out and check out their system for them, okay? The type of septic system, again, is it community, conventional, alternative, or experimental? One of the things I ran into over this weekend was that an agent was making an offer on a property, already made an offer on a property, and the listing agent did not have in there that there are actually 2 different septic systems on their land because there was a guest house or some other building, and that they had an alternative and a conventional, okay? So we were trying to work with the seller to make sure that this was done properly. They have to do inspections on both accordingly, okay? All right. So the Code of Virginia requires seller to disclose whether the on-site septic system serving the property is operating under a waiver of repair and or maintenance requirements imposed by the State Board of Health. If the septic system is operating pursuant to a waiver, then the seller must provide the buyer with a disclosure regarding the validity of the septic system permit. Prior to contract ratification, such waiver is not transferable to the buyer. So there may be something wrong with the septic system. The health department has found it acceptable for the current usage, and they have a waiver on there, but it's not transferable to the buyer. So the buyer has to deal with whatever the issue may be, okay? Seller represents that the septic system is or is not operating under a waiver from the State Board of Health, okay? And this should be listed in the MLS as well. So you gotta be very careful when you are representing a buyer, checking out the well and septic and making sure it's, it's all done accordingly. All right, now during the buyer's agreement, we went over the broker's duties. They're mirrored here. You're representing the seller as if you're representing the buyer. You're the sole representative for the seller, okay? One of the differences that The broker shall represent all written counter offers. That's the same. The broker should not continue to market, show, permit showings after property is subject to a ratified contract unless otherwise instructed by the seller in writing. So where paragraph E comes into play is if you have an offer on the property, if we get into the contracts, you'll see this more, but basically you have an offer on the property that has a contingency on it for the sale of the buyer's home. So the seller may continue to offer it under the property active. So they're agreed to do that, okay? They're telling you that they want to leave it active under contract to get backup offers, okay? Broker shall account in a timely manner for all monies, property received in trust by broker in which the seller may have an interest. We're not dealing with money. Any money we're sending to the title company, okay? Broker shall show property during reasonable hours to prospective buyers and shall accompany or accommodate as needed other real estate licensees, their prospective buyers, inspectors, appraisers, exterminators, and other parties necessary for showings and inspections of property to facilitate and or consummate the sale of a property. So again, I love when I teach this class because so much happens during the week and the weekend that I need to talk about. So this weekend, twice I had a situation come up from two different agents where they had listings and the seller was refusing to let people into the house without them staying there. Now, I don't know this agent particularly well, so I didn't know what type of training they had. Had they talked to their seller in advance on what happens? So you as agents need to kind of paint that picture with your seller as once it goes on the market, there's a couple things you're looking for. That, you know, the house needs to be in good condition, okay? You need to be bold with your sellers, not mean, but bold. You need to walk through the home with them and you need to talk to them about depersonalizing and decluttering. We all have junk everywhere, you know, getting some bins, getting some boxes, because the idea that they're moving is already in people's minds. So if they don't have a garage or a basement where they can store their boxes, they can choose a room and you know, neatly stack boxes in there. People can perceive, or they can rent a storage facility. I personally don't like to see the pods in front of a house when you're walking up for the curb appeal. Another thing that Dan's Van Lines and Shoreview do, Shoreview Movers with realtor referrals, is they do a decluttering for the clients. So they'll come in and do a decluttering move and they store their stuff at their facility, okay? And then when they're ready to move, they come and get the rest of the furniture, put the group together, move it on to the new home. So when they have a lot of stuff, that's a good thing to do, okay? But depersonalizing the house, getting all the, you know, family pictures down, ammunition and guns, you know, they need to be taken care of. In our area, it is not uncommon that we're going to have people that work in law enforcement or who will have some type of, or just personal use. You know, hunting season's coming up. You know, I had my dear clients, I had a ex-police officer, ex-Marine, ex-FBI, ex-CIA, all one man, right? So, you know, and when the flooring guys came to check out the house, he called me up right away and says, before I can let my guys come in, his guns have to be out of the way. I'm like, yeah, we're going to take care of that, you know? And so with him, I had a go bag for him. So we had our go box. So he and his wife and I got a box that we thought was appropriate size for him. And because he's retired, he's at home often. So I painted a picture for him that, you know, I have on the listing that it's an hour warning for someone to come in to see your property. So when I call you to say, is it okay that someone comes at 2 o'clock? Now you have the right to tell me no, because sometimes you might be in the middle of something and that's okay. But every single time you call your seller to see if someone can come by and they say no, that's not good, especially in this market, especially if they want to sell the home, right? So, you know, so it's like when I call you and say and someone wants to be there at 2, I really want you out of the house by 1:45. So that really gives you 45 minutes. You know, it's usually longer than that. People, but every now and again it's not. But this is what I need you to do. You know, he would come in, you know, and he would have his little desk where he would take everything out of his pockets and lay them on the desk, including his gun and his holster and everything. I said, so you got your go box here, so you have to scrape all that stuff into your box and carry it to your car, and you need to leave. His wife works, so it was me visualizing with him what I needed him to do. And oh, by the way, when you get up in the morning, you need to make your beds, and they always did. You can't leave your dishes in the sink, you know, and people will. You're going to have listings you're going to go into. You are going to be dumbfounded. You're going to be shocked. I always, when I open up a door for my client, before we turn the key, I always say to my client, just because we have asked to come here, the minute we unlock this door, if you don't feel comfortable and have no desire to see it, that's no problem. We relock the door and I send a message to the agent, because sometimes it can be that bad. And I've been in some places that were that bad. So, and I'm not talking about low selling places either. I'm talking things at $700,000-$800,000 that are that bad. So just you're painting a picture with your buyers and sellers, okay? So you need to talk. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Also the dogs, no?
Yes, dogs and pets. That was the next thing. If they have dogs and pets, you know, dogs, cats, birds, whatever. You know, fish are fish. They're in an aquarium. Birds are in a bird cage, but birds can scare people if they're not expecting it. So people are often putting a listing, and I was with clients, and that's what really brought it to my mind is we were looking at a house, and we walked into the bedroom, and the light would turn on. Well, that's kind of weird. And as we continued to walk into the bedroom, and I turned my light on my phone, a bird just started going crazy, you know, in the cage. So, and it scared the little girl. So, you know, there again, as a listing agent, they should have told us there was a bird in there and that the light was disabled because I guess it bothered the bird or whatever. But they, you know, it's like, why couldn't you put a cover over the bird, you know, move the bird somewhere else? But anyway, but that's, as you as listing agents, as you walk through your client's home, you need to be bold, not mean, okay? And just point out things. And one thing you might do with your clients, and I've done this with a couple clients before who were really resistant. I would look up a couple listings online near them, choose a really nice one, choose a not so nice one, for example, based on the pictures, and I would take my client to those listings and let them feel what they were seeing as they walked through, okay? And then they got the idea of what to do, okay? So again, so the broker agrees that the showing instructions to be shared on the MLS with other real estate licensees and their prospective buyers are as follows. So this is where you're going to say, talk to your sellers, how much lead time do you need? Okay, we're all in COVID right now. Kids are home from school. Kids are working from school, from home. So they might need an hour, 2 hour lead time. Some people put as much as 24 hours in there, okay? Now, if you're a landlord who's working with tenants to sell your property, then the listing agent, the landlord, and the tenant all have to work together to figure out how best to list this property. The tenant has responsibilities according to their lease to make the property available. It doesn't mean it has to be available all hours of the day. It can be certain hours of the day, and you just work with that, and that's what goes in here, okay? Friends of mine years ago, she had a Fairfax County approved daycare center. When they were selling their home, Fairfax County said no one could be in the home during the daycare hours, okay? So they could only show the home after 4 o'clock. So it was 4 o'clock p.m. to 8 p.m. Okay, that was a limit, and then Saturday and Sundays. So during the week, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., Saturdays and Sundays, because there was an approved daycare in there and you couldn't have strangers in the house with the kids. Makes sense, right? So all that type of thing. So what does the families need? Sometimes you run into things like there's a newborn in the house and they nap sometime between 10 and 12. Okay, then you know, on your showing time, it blocks out those times. You can go in and block out what times people can and cannot see the house, okay? So use the technologies available to you. Brokers shall or shall not Install an electronic lockbox on the property to allow access and showings by persons who are authorized to access the property. Generally speaking, you're going to see shall, but sometimes the lockbox may not actually be on the property. Sometimes in condos, they're left at the concierge desk. Some of the units that have, or like garden condos, there might be a railing outside where all the lock boxes are. Now, when you're in those situations, and even in a normal situation, please put your business card on the outside, on the back of your lockbox, tape it on there. When you're on the inside, when you've got your key, please make sure you put a tag that has the unit number on there, especially in the condo situations. It's probably been more than about 10 more years ago. I had to be part of a group. I think I may have told you guys this story. Over in McLean, there was a complex and someone, we believe they went in maliciously and transferred all the, this is before we had the electronic, so we could see who it was per se, you know, and all the keys were wrong and all the lock boxes. So we all the agents had to go over there and open up their lock boxes. And fortunately, our agents that I went over there with to help sort the mess out, they had been taught to put their unit number on there, and we were able to find them. But some of the agents, they had to physically go and check the keys to figure out, you know, they didn't remember what key ring they had or whatever. So again, make it simple. Get the key rings that you can put a little label on there. Even the reusable ones, you can slide the little paper in and out and label them. Now, every now and again, you're going to run into a client who does not want a lockbox on their house. They could just be a very private person. They could be someone of that people might recognize. They don't want looky-loos in their house. So they may have an appointment only listing, okay? So there would be no lockbox, okay? Appointment only, okay? Then you have shall or shall not install a for sale sign. Again, that really depends on the community. A lot of condos, you know, you can't put for sale signs. Guard condos, no for sale signs. Some of the out in Heritage Hunt, for example, you can put your own sign, but you're limited to the size of the sign and the style of the sign and the type of signpost. They really prefer that you use their signage, so you have to pay through their printer and have your sign made. So you have to follow the rules and regulations of those properties. So some might say, you know, your sign can only be so many square feet. And if you got a huge sign, then you can't use it, okay? So if you're gonna order signs for yourself, you know, you might get a couple varieties of different sizes, so you're covered, okay? Same with, make sure you speak with your mentors and your coaches when you're doing open houses, finding out what the rules and regulations are about putting signs up on the streets, where you can put signs. Just because you see a political sign in the middle of the highway doesn't mean you're allowed to do that. They'll leave all those political signs there. They're going to pull your sign down and they're going to fine you as a realtor for putting your sign there. Okay, so be very careful about that. I know here at Falls Church there used to be something hanging. I think it was, may have been in the kitchen, about what the state rules and regulations were about signage. Do you have a question, Monica?
Yeah. Can you put a sign like for sale or rent in your garden? So we have some guys.
No,
No?
no. So her question was, could she put a sign in her yard as if she was advertising her house, even though it didn't say for sale or for rent? No, because you're trying to advertise yourself. In the days of old, that would have probably been okay. About a year ago, the coming soon law became very strict, and any real estate sign can only be in the yard one business day prior to it going active in the MLS. Okay, so and then when it comes out of the MLS, you know, when the MLS it closes, it needs to be pulled out of the yard. Okay. Otherwise, it's looked as if it's false advertising. Okay. All right. So now marketing, MLS, and internet advertising. I'm going to read through this. I'm going to give you my opinion and that of a lot of other people. You can do whatever you and your client want. But read the verbiage. We're going to read through this and then understand. Okay. Seller authorizes or seller does not authorize the broker to market the property via the multiple listing system. Yes or no? Some people don't. They don't want it. And again, I had an agent who her client won't let her put a lockbox on. They won't let her put a sign in the yard. This is in Arlington, and they were unsure whether they wanted to be in the MLS. It's like, you really don't give me many choices to advertise your property. Okay. So she had to just go through with him. I don't know what fear factor is there, and you just have to understand, let them talk. What are their objections so you can figure out how to combat them. Okay.
And the situation would you add, like, so for example,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it'd be like, oh, we'll put it on Facebook. It's like, yeah, that only limits the people that I know on Facebook, you know. And Zillow is incorrect, you know, so yeah. So you know, at the end she's got him down to MLS only, no sign and no lockbox. Now I said the problem with the lockbox is you live 50 miles from the listing. And he wants you to show a vacant house. So I said, you need to talk him into getting the lockbox on there. Explain to him, show him how when someone swipes in and out, it's recorded. Okay. I mean, it's a vacant house to begin with. So, but anyway, so if the seller authorizes broker to market property in the MLS, broker shall disseminate via the MLS information regarding the property, including the listing price, the final sales price, that's after it goes to closing, all terms and all status updates during and after the expiration of this agreement. Broker shall enter the listing information into MLS within 3 business days of the commencement of the listing period, or, now the reason I prefer not doing the 3 business days because we don't know what's going to happen. Okay. I prefer, as a lot of other agents, is that you do honor before. Because honor before means you can take a shot in the dark for a week or 2 weeks out. Your client may say, oh, we can get the house cleaned up over the weekend, and they all get sick, okay? Or the kid gets sick, or the dog gets sick, or whatever, and it just stops what happens, okay? And then you have to go back and have this re-signed because this agreement is saying you have to have it in the MLS on or before that 3rd business day, okay? By saying on or before, and you can look at a day in the future, that means if they're ready 7 days before the day in the future of 14 days away, then you can put it on the market, okay? Because before you put it on the market, you want to have pictures taken. So that's the other reason why the 3 business days is a really tight fit, because will they have time to get the house ready and pictures taken in that 3 business days? Okay. Yeah, right. Don't take a lot of pictures of the commodes. Nobody wants to see pictures of the commodes. You know, the whole bathroom, if it's a nice bathroom, yeah, you're quick shot of the bathroom, but you don't need 5 pictures of the commode from 5 different angles. You know, even if it's gold plated, I just wouldn't do it. Okay. So in the event the broker shall enter the listing information in MLS within 1 business day of public marketing of the property. So if you're going to market it on Monday, 1 business day would be in by Friday. Okay. Now you're going to have all the agents in your neighborhood are going to start complaining to MLS, but it's a business day. Okay. So, so just be very careful and working with your signpost people if you're hiring someone to do it for you. Okay. You can always do your signpost yourself or have someone you know. They cost about $85 at MBAR, and they're online too. The white signpost, yeah. Okay, in the event, brokers shall enter the listing information in MLS within 1 business day of public marketing of property. Public marketing includes, but is not limited to, displaying flyers in windows, yard signs, digital marketing on public-facing websites, broker web pages, including internet data exchanges and virtual office websites, digital communications, marketing, email blasts, multiple brokerage listings, sharing networks, and applications available to the general public. Facebook, Twitter, what's the other, Snapchat, Instagram, all of those. You cannot do it except for one day before it goes on the market. Okay. So if you get your business, if you get postcards done, then, 2 days before it goes on the market, you can mail them out, but not much more than that. Okay, so when they say coming soon, they're coming soon on MLS, and we'll get to that in a few minutes, okay? And that's acceptable because it's in MLS as coming soon, okay? All right, so paragraph 2 under A, if seller does not authorize broker to market via MLS, broker shall instead market property as an office exclusive listing. Office exclusive listing means any listing seller has prohibited broker from public marketing. For each office exclusive listing, seller shall sign and deliver concurrently with this agreement a waiver of broker submission to MLS. I've never seen this happen, except for that one case, but we talked him out of it. Form of other acceptable certification that the broker does not authorize the broker, that the seller does not authorize the broker to publicly market the listing via MLS or otherwise. Broker shall submit such waiver or other certification to MLS within 3 business days of execution of this agreement. See, MLS needs to know that that was what the seller says, so that you yourself as an agent are not fined for not properly listing something. Okay.
So if the owner of the house doesn't want to put it on the, you put in zero, Julia, and another thing, or you cannot.
Well, right here it's saying you can only do it as an office exclusive. That means just tell people in your office, because if you put it on Zillow and Trulia and don't put it in MLS, you're violating the MLS rules.
That's a mafia, Emily.
Yeah. Huh?
It's a mafia. Big mafia.
I will say that on recording. Okay, so B, seller authorizes or does not authorize the broker marketing the property through MLS to also make listing data available to third-party websites. Okay, so here's where once it's MLS, you're then making it available to third-party websites. Seller understands that the listing data may get disseminated to third-party websites through means other than the MLS, regardless of the selection above. Okay. Seller acknowledges that the accuracy of the listing data is controlled by the third-party website and is outside the broker's control. The parties agree and understand that third-party websites include brokers' internet websites of licensed real estate salespersons or associate real estate brokers affiliated with broker or other brokerages participating in MLS, any other internet websites such as syndicated websites, and according with applicable MLS rules, regulations, and printed media. So what happens is it goes into MLS, and then it gets disseminated out to other websites, and it could take 24, 48, or even more hours, depending on the website. And so you need to make sure your client understands that Zillow and all those don't necessarily carry over the information correctly. It depends on how their site's set up. So I had a personal situation a couple years ago where I had a client listing a home, and they called me from their Florida home and was raking me over the coals because online it said their square footage was missing like 1,000 square feet. And I said, okay, please pull up your KW app that I gave you and look up your home on there. What does the square footage say? And it was correct. They said, well, online it's not correct. I said, because online they're choosing the wrong field. They're not choosing total square footage. They're choosing above ground or whatever. Okay. So I said, we can't help that. And I went over that with you. And no, you can contact them whether anything comes of it. Yes, you can.
Sometimes they put like on the second
Yeah. Yeah, you can certainly try to contact these online places, but then to correct it, then you've got the other issue, which will come up here in a few minutes, okay? In the event seller has opted into marketing to the MLS, paragraph A above, broker is hereby authorized by seller to submit the marketing as follows. Seller does or does not authorize the property address to be displayed on the website. So generally speaking, we say yes to that one. Now you might have a client who's high profile client who says no, and then it's just the zip code that's displayed. Okay, in MLS, an agent has access to the MLS, so it's there in the MLS. But when it goes out to the Zillow and all those, it's just the zip code and not the address. Okay, so that's trying to keep someone from trying to find a particular person, you know.
So they basically get a lot of people, and they know that the house.
Right. So sometimes when a house is empty or whatever. So anyway, so that's a yes. Generally speaking, that's a yes. Seller does or does not authorize the display of unedited comments. Okay, this is generally should be no. This is where you're allowing other agents and other websites to make comments about your listing. Now, just because you say no here and you replicate it on MLS to say no, it doesn't mean that they don't do it, but it gives the seller something to go after if they do. It's not you that can go after the other people, it's the seller. If someone writes something negative or derogatory that could harm their listing. So here, generally speaking, you would say no. You don't want someone to make unedited comments or reviews about your property. And then the other one is the automatic estimates, the Zestimates. So again, here it's best to say no, to try to keep Zillow from giving their Zestimates to somebody, or to hyperlink that estimate to somebody. So you as agents, now Gary Keller tells us not to go out and buy our own Zillow ads back, you know, but that's a personal choice you make. But you need to understand your client that when your stuff goes out to the websites, other brokerages are going to take it. They're going to boost themselves on the internet. So when your listing comes up, someone else's face may be there next to it. It's not going to be your face. Now, when they read down through the listing, you're on there somewhere, but you're not necessarily the face that's next to theirs. That's one of those deceptive things that we deal with when it comes to real estate, okay? Now, here, paragraph D, answering your question, Raekwon. Seller authorizes or does not authorize the broker to list a property under coming soon status in MLS. If seller authorizes a broker to list property under coming soon status in MLS, broker shall list property under coming soon status in MLS within 3 days or on or before. Again, I would choose the on or before here, okay? Same issue as above, are they ready? Now you can do it coming soon and not only have one picture, which is the outside of the house, because they're getting the inside ready. But please understand that the property may be listed MLS under coming soon status no more than 21 days. So on day 21 at midnight, the MLS makes it active. Okay, it just automatically makes it active. So if your seller is not ready, then you have to go in and take it and make it temporary off, but the days start counting. When people talk about days on the market, they will start counting. First day will be that starting that at midnight there. So again, you have a conversation with your sellers. Okay, you've got some things you want to do. We want to build interest around your property. We can put a sign in the yard. We have 21 days for you to get the place decluttered and cleaned up and pictures taken. And if you get that done in 14 days, we can trigger it live. But we can take up to 21 days, but it's on or before, okay? And then we can trigger it live. So if you're going to do the 21 days here, then above, you need to match that on or before date that you're going active in MLS to parallel with your coming soon down here, okay? No. So it's active in MLS under coming soon.
Okay.
So in MLS, it doesn't say the word active. It says coming soon, okay? But it's in MLS as notifying the world that it's out there, okay? At that point, 1 day prior to doing that in MLS, coming soon, you can put a sign in the yard that says coming soon for sale, coming soon for rent, Okay. And at that point, correct. Yeah, it can be there the whole 21 days. And then on that date that it goes active, the coming soon sign comes down. Okay. And it's between whether you go take care of it or you have someone take care of it for you, or you ask your clients to remove it. It's what, you're getting the commission. It's a good thing for you to go check with your clients, make sure everything's updated in the house and ready to go. And that and you should not put your lockbox on during the coming soon. Don't even allow or risk someone walking into that property or an agent walking by your property and seeing you've got a lockbox there to coming soon sign. Okay. If you need to have, if your client says, well, we need to have workers come in and we can't always be here, you can tell your client, you can buy a combination box, or if you have one, you can offer it to them to put a combination box on to allow the photographer, workers, or someone to come in. Personally, I think you should be there when the photographer comes through, to make sure they do the shots the way you want to do them and stuff. So, and if your seller's there when the photographer comes through, that's fine. But they should not be there when people view the property. Okay. Okay, property may be listed in MLS under coming soon. No more than 21 days from the date the listing entered in MLS. Broker may engage in pre-marketing activities. So once you list it as coming soon, you can now do all that pre-marketing stuff as coming soon. You can send out postcards because it's out in public view. You're not hiding it. And the reason this came into play was so many people were cheating the system. They were listing places as coming soon, and even though it says you can put a sign in the yard, if you put it in the MLS, you couldn't show it to people, but people were still doing it. And even out where I live, I've had 3 incidences now where I've called the listing agent to ask specifics about a property that we're coming soon. So my client, if it would meet their criteria, if it's something we want to put on our list to see when it came up. And each and every time the agent said, oh, you can go by and look at it. I've already hung the lockbox. I'm like, I know. They could be setting me up to lose my license too, So no. So, just be very careful about that. There's people looking to fine you. It's a huge fine about this. So, place your coming soon sign. You can notify other agents. You can place advertisements. You can conduct your pre-marketing, sending out your postcards and stuff. Okay. And I would suggest when you send out your postcards, make sure that you're saying when it does become active, especially if you're marketing to an area, because someone might be interested but would not have access to the MLS. So put that on your postcard that it's becoming active on such and such date, or have them call you to find out. Okay, we've already gone over the types of representation in the seller and designated. This question came up a couple times when you guys did your homework, because each state's a little bit different. So designated representation means that you've got the umbrella of the broker in our offices, or KW United, our 3 offices. So Steve Gaskins is the principal broker over our 3 offices, okay? He's the big chief. So whether Monica, what office are you with, Monica? Are you here? Okay, so Monica's in Kingstown, and Raekwon, you're here at Falls Church. Okay, so Raekwon is the listing agent, and Monica is the selling agent representing the buyer, and they're working on a deal together. They're from 2 different offices, but they're under the same broker. They're under Steve Gaskins. So they're designated representatives, which means Steve has tapped Raekwon on the head and said, you, my son, are going to be the listing agent, and you are the seller, the buyer's agent, okay? They're your clients. You're the ones filling out the documents. Shannon, Angela, Steve are signing, but to understand how that works, in truest sense of the word, Steve himself or the brokerage themselves are dual agents, but not in the sense here. The brokerage is a dual agent, but we don't declare that. We declare designated agency, which means it's the same broker, but the agents declare paperwork to each other and their clients. Okay. We do not allow dual agency in the office. So the policy from Steve, Shannon, and Angela is that if you have some compelling reason to be a dual agent, even with the rentals, when we get there next week, we'll talk about that. Shannon would like you to talk to her and explain to her why you think there's a compelling reason, and then they'll explain to you the pitfalls of what can happen. I will say to you, one of the most easiest to understand is that you are a seller. Did I give you guys this example about, okay, right, last week? Okay, so I did that with you guys already. Why we don't do it. It's very simple to say, I'm not going to share information, but it just could be a coincidence that what the buyer offers is what the seller said, and your reputation is ruined. All your referrals are ruined. It's just not worth it, okay? So here you want to always say yes to designation, no to dual. Does not consent to dual, does consent to designation. Any questions about that? Do you guys want to take a 5-minute break? We'll come back at 11:05.
Okay.
Back to resuming. Back to screen sharing. Do you guys see that? Sometimes it doesn't always pick back up.
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay. All right, so the top of page 27. Well, before I get into that, we'll go ahead and while we're waiting for everyone to come back, we'll talk about homework for Thursday. So I had 3 people do their, take a stab at their listing agreement. So everyone else for Thursday, you need to put together a listing agreement, add all the addenda in there. If you need a copy of a listing to use, please let me know and I will email you if you don't have access to MLS to look at a tax record, I'll email you one. And that way you can do your listing agreement accordingly. And and then all the addenda that go along with it, which if you go to your table of contents. So if the listing you chose was built before 1978, then you're going to use your lead-based paint. So you need to put all that together. And Falls Church in Fredericksburg, you need to send that to Shannon through command. Set yourself up as the seller, and Shannon, of course, is the broker. So you're practicing putting your agreement together. You're also practicing sending it to Shannon for her signature. That way, if you run into trouble, it's a training moment that we can help out with. For those in Kingstown, you can just send it to me through your command and DocuSign. Don't make me the broker. Just make me to receive a copy type thing, so I can just look through it, or you can send it to me as a PDF. Either way, you can send it to me through Google Docs as well. I know some people had some issues with emailing stuff because of the size of documents. So you can break them up into different groups. What happens is when you scan them in, different scanners make things a different size. Sometimes you can go in and resize your scanned documents and they'll email better.
Hey, Deb.
Yes.
If you've got your docs in command in a room or in a folder in a room, is the preferred way to email them directly from that folder and just use the emails, or is there another preferred way to do it?
No, that's great if you can do it right from there. Yes.
Okay. So there's no like command functionality that you'd recommend over and above doing what I did, for example. Okay.
Some people don't have access to command yet or very new.
Okay,
So
got it.
I would rather you get the listing agreement done than struggle with command when you're very new at it and haven't got things set up or haven't been trained on it yet.
Hmm.
Because there's several people that haven't even got their license finished
Right.
yet. So yeah, if you have access to command. Now, Mr. Jeff there, he's trying to be teacher's pet because he sent me the contract, which is next week's homework, as opposed to the listing agreement.
So,
I left an apple on your desk, Deb. Did you see that as well?
I haven't been to Fredericksburg yet. It better be polished too. So anyway,
so Deb, when we put it through, do we go ahead and because in Kingstown you said to go ahead and put ourselves there so that it comes to us to sign off?
correct.
Is that okay?
Yeah, and then you can send it to me, sign off to yourself, and then send it to me as, I don't want to be sent it, I don't want you to send it to me as a broker because I don't want to mess up your system.
I think I just sent it as an email to you.
Right, yeah, exactly. I think that's what yours was, and that was fine. I don't need to sign it, I just want to look at it.
Right.
Yeah, and then make any comments that, if anything's, there's little things that we all need to tweak every now and again, but I'm really looking for anything that's really out of line that needs to be
Major.
done. And then I just, and I let the individual know, and then as a class, especially if it comes up more than once, then we'll go back over it and
Okay.
reiterate it, okay? Okay, homework for Thursday is the listing agreement.
Okay.
So go to your table of contents and all the items. So if you have access to MLS, choose someone you know's home or choose a house that you're interested in. It doesn't matter. That's a listing, or it doesn't have to be a listing. It can be any house. You just get the tax record from MLS and fill out a listing agreement. Okay. And if you don't have access to MLS, then send me a message and I will send you a listing, So for some, and I'll put this all out in an email later on today as well. So Samantha, as we're saying, homework is for Thursday, and anyone else who's back to join us is to do a listing, table of contents, all the addenda that go along with it. Choose any listing out of MLS, an active one if you want to, and redo it, replicate it, or choose any address through the tax record. And then make yourself the seller so you can sign the document and then send it to Shannon or for Fredericksburg and Falls Church and myself for Kingstown. Okay. If you don't have access to MLS, give me an address or ask me to send you an address. I gave someone this week, my sister. I forgot about that. So when it came up and I saw my sister, her husband's name, I'm like, what is this? I'm like, oh yeah, I know what it is. So anyway, okay, so an additional disclosure is required before designated representation to occur for a specific transaction. So like our example earlier, Raekwon and Monica, if Monica's going to show Raekwon's listing and all of a sudden she's going to make an offer, she needs to add the dual representation to the offer so that both the buyer and seller are aware that they are designated representatives from the same brokerage, okay? It's just like, hello, everyone. We want you to. Oh. I was like, I can hear myself an echo. So we want to make sure that the buyer and seller know that there could be that, that you guys are from the same brokerage, but we're still very confidential, okay? And the world out there doesn't really understand the majority how real estate really works. And certainly what you see on TV is not really reality, even when it says reality TV. And then what people blog about is often not what it's about. So, you have to educate your buyers and sellers. And, the more you can paint a picture, and the stories I tell, some of them are actually my stories and some are stories that belong to other agents. I just don't mention who they are that's happened to help you understand why we do things a certain way and why it's the best way to handle something. Okay. Broker compensation. So this is the paragraph that you must go over with your client. You cannot gloss over it, and you just need to be bold about it, okay? Payment. Seller shall pay broker in cash a total compensation of, which means at settlement. They're not going to hand you over cash. It's just the language. Okay. Shall pay to the broker, because you're not the broker. So it's at settlement. If during the terms of this agreement, anyone produces a buyer ready, willing, and able to buy the property. So what's the compensation? We would love to have 6%. Now, someone that did their homework this week and put in 7%, and that's great. We had an agent was with us years ago, and she would tell people, my normal 7%, but I'll be willing to negotiate down to 6. You know? But again, all the blogging out there has hurt realtors in many regards. So ideally, you want 6%, but again, you're going to work with your seller. You have to explain to them what you're doing for that 6%, and you need to calculate it out to them because they don't know what 6% means, okay? So you say to them, if we list your house at $500,000, then that's $30,000, and they're going to have a freaked out moment. And you say, now, however, half of that goes to the person representing the buyer, who's taking buyers around doing the paperwork and who've gotten their license, who are professionals, we hope, and half of it goes to me. Now, in my case, I'm getting 3% from you, okay, and you can hold up, Brian Buffini used to do this, you can hold up, you know, $3 bills or 3 pieces of paper and say, so in the 3% you're paying me, about 1%, and it really depends on what your split is with your brokerage, but about 1% of that is going to my broker that pays all the fees and the licensing and the insurance that covers our brokerage. And then another portion of what's left goes to the taxes that I pay and my expenses. So I'm left with about 1 to 1.5% of that. So that's how much I'm getting paid to represent you. So that you're breaking it down for them, okay? Now there's a lot of garbage out there talking about why the seller shouldn't be paying these fees and stuff. We've got brokerages who are really hurting full-time brokerages like us who are really undercutting. So you're gonna have clients who are gonna say, well, I can go with X broker and only pay 4.5%, okay? You have to decide for your own business if you're going to do that or not, okay? I would come back and say, well, I would like to do it for 5%, but I'm going to do these services for you. Are they doing this for you? Okay. So it's a discussion back and forwards. If you're going to do the flat commission, just like on the buyer's one, then it would be, you would say 6% or whatever it is, plus whatever the amount of money is, flat commission. Again, make sure you say the word flat commission here, not just the amount of money. It needs to have the word flat commission following it. Right. So it'd be like 6% plus, you can do the plus side or spell out the word plus, $295 flat commission. Okay. You can say flat fee. It's better if you say flat commission so they understand it's part of your commission. Fee tends to lend to, fee makes people think more administrative. Yes, Raekwon.
So we do the plus flat commission. The flat commission, is that you get that immediately or that's still after?
That comes at the settlement table, right?
One question. That flat commission is shared with the broker too?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah, it's commission. So whatever your split is with the broker is shared with the broker, right?
So can you say like you begin and you need to put your name record of house you sold, right? So can you tell the seller like, okay, I will do 3% plus flat commission of 2,000? Or is too much to do later?
Yeah, it's a lot. Most people, most flat commissions are around 500. Some have them as low as 295. I know someone who does it for 695.
But can you put 2,000
You can,
if the seller agrees?
if the seller agrees, yeah. Chances are you probably won't get the listing.
I only ever saw things between about 250 and
Well, no, but you're saying,
You play,
but how much are you going to give the buyer's agent?
well, if,
Because 6% means you're giving 3% to the buyer's
Yeah.
agent and 3% to you.
right, and if you put 3%, you give 1%, 1.5 to the buyer, and you keep 1%.
Yeah, don't do that to buyer's agents. Don't go below 2%. Come on, guys, don't do it. I know we know these other brokerages are doing that. Don't do it. You work too hard. You're out showing houses. You're, especially in this market, you're making so many offers.
Well, but there is one thing.
Right. You don't want to be on the end of your client really loves that house and they're going to give you 1.5%. You know,
Well, there is both sides, Debbie, because you need to open your market, right? You need to be known on the niche of the market that you're going to work, right? So.
well, you could give 4%.
Yeah,
Or
but
let's say,
you are paying to be your face in, so like, oh, Monica Hunter, oh, she sold 10 houses last year, okay? That is money, like the same you're paying MLS, the same you pay your.
not always. It's not always. It doesn't always translate that way. But I would say be very careful about your plus commission. But if you wanted to do something like that, you would say, if you were to put 4% there and offer 2.5% to the buyer's agent, 1.5% to yourself, plus 2,000, you can certainly do that. You have to look at the price point of the house too.
Right, exactly, because the house can be $1 million, 700,000.
Depends, right.
1% is a lot. But let me ask, that 2,000, do you share with the buyers too?
No,
That's you and your broker.
right, right. So here, what you do is you say, whatever commission goes here, you're going to divide it up down here. So let's finish reading the paragraph and we'll go back to that, okay? So if compensation is earned within 30 days after the expiration or termination of this agreement, a contract is ratified with a ready, willing, and able buyer to whom property has been shown during this term of this agreement, provided, however, that compensation need not be paid if a contract is ratified on property while property is listed with another real estate company. So you can put 30 days in here to cover yourself if you forget what the expiration date is, which you don't want to do because once it's in MLS, it triggers it at midnight that it's expired. But what that covers you is, let's say we expire at the end of September 30th, Wednesday, September 30th, and we have a contract on the home and it's due to close on the 18th of September, okay? So my agreement covers me. Even if it were to close October 1st, the agreement says it covers me through the settlement. But if something goes wrong with that deal and it gets voided, then again, the 30 days here would only cover me during that time period, because once it expires in the listing, it expires out of MLS. Okay, the world knows you've expired. So whenever you're getting close to your expiration date, always calendar yourself at least 2 weeks in advance to trigger it to go through and get an amendment to extend your agreement, okay, to protect yourself. It also says in here that if you don't have a contract, and so if the client has fired you, they've hired another company, then they're going to get the money, right? Okay. You can put 60 days, but it really doesn't matter because someone can fire you and get another company. 30 days is like the oops type thing. But, you know, I've seen people put 90 days. It really doesn't mean anything anymore because you can be terminated and they can hire somebody else. So cooperating broker. Broker shall make a blanket unilateral offer of cooperation and compensation to other brokerages in the MLS that broker deems appropriate. To the end, broker shall offer a portion of the compensation to the cooperating broker as indicated. So up here, let's say you put 5%. And then down here, you say to your client, we'll offer the buyer 2.5%. So you're going to split it, 2.5 and 2.5. Nowhere on here does it say what the listing side gets. It's a mathematical subtraction. So here it's 5, down here it's 2.5, which means it's leaving 2.5 for the listing agent. Under other compensation, you want to put an N. You don't want compensation going to a non-agent, okay? Someone who's not represented, you do not want them to have the opportunity to get that commission. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I think I just had a slow movement.
Okay.
So for the buyer agency compensation, if I'm getting for the payment, if my payment is 6%, then most of the time I'll put 3%.
Right. If your payment is 6%, you would put 3% down here. Now, I've been on the receiving end where the seller, the listing agent did get 6%, but they only offered 2% down here. Her reasoning was that she was doing all this work and paying for all this stuff in advance for her client. That would have been fine, and I would have been reasonably understand that, but the client paid her back for everything and closed it on top of the commission. She just, but that was what she offered. You know, that's what she offered.
So now as the buyer's agent, when you have your buyer's agreement and you say 3%, so now the buyer is responsible for making up that other 1%.
Great question, Raekwon. Yes, so that's what your buyer's agreement says. That's why we suggested you probably put 2% on the buyer's agreement, because chances are, even though we have some companies now doing less than 2% for the buyer, most of them don't go below 2%. So that means if you do 2% on your buyer's agreement, then it's okay. But if you do 3% on the buyer's agreement and you're only offered 2%, and my buyer's agreement says 3%, that means my buyer is supposed to pay me the difference. Or I go back and amend my buyer's agreement, says 2%, they initial it and the broker initials it.
Is it uncommon to have that? Like, I know you said something about like the trends are changing. So that
Right,
in theory, you're going to be buyer paying the buyer.
right.
If I do this, is that uncommon?
Well, it's not uncommon, it's happening more and more. So to really cover yourself, to make sure your buyer is assured, because their lender is going to say, you know, again, the lender has to approve them to pay you. So, you know, they have to come up maybe, like say, an extra $5,000 or $6,000 to pay your 1%. Okay, and they can't afford that. So you give them assurance that by having them initial changing the buyer's agreement from 3% to 2%, you're saying, I know I'm only getting 2%. The buyer's not looking for that on the listing, but you as an agent, when you're, and I frankly don't look to see what my commission is before I show my buyer the property. I did on one of my listings, I had an agent call me and said, you know, if your seller will give 3%, because it was 2.75 or 2.5, I'll bring my buyer to show it. I'm like, they said no. So, you know, because they said they're going to bring their buyer doesn't mean they're going to, you know, and so they're going to write an offer or anything. So, right. Well, you can say to them, so her question was, if someone is listed and they're only going to have pay 0.5% or 1% for even to a buyer's agent and your client really wants to see it, we're supposed to show them the property. Well, then you would go back to your buyer's agreement and say, that's great, I'll show you the property. But remember, our buyer's agreement says you owe me 2%. So that means you have to make up the delta, the difference between what those, because it says at the beginning of the buyer's agreement, directly or indirectly. Directly means the buyer pays the commission, indirectly means it's coming from the seller. So whatever you can get out from the seller. So it's either directly or indirectly, okay?
But if we've put 2.5% on our buyer agreement and we're willing to accept the 2 because that's all the seller's agent's gonna give, then we just have to do an amendment or just go back and initial it and change the amount.
Just initial and change the buyer's agreement.
Okay.
And that's why Shannon said if we just hover around 2% right now, because the buyer's agreement, if you remember, that last sentence says anything above
Right.
there is yours.
Okay.
Yeah. If it says, if we put down 2 in the listing broker is offering more than 2, we're allowed to accept it. It has nothing, the buyer doesn't get no, you don't have to resign anything. It's yours. Now, I had a situation about a year ago, and a new agent had written a listing agreement, had it signed. by their client, but had not sent it to the broker yet, wanted me to look it over. And they had put in 3% here under A, and they put in 3% here for buyer's compensation. And I said, well, that's mighty generous of you. You're not taking any commission?
No problem.
And he's like, no, 3% for me and 3% for, I'm like, that's not what this says. So I said, you need to go back to the seller and be as honest as you can and explain, the way the forms are, whatever, and try to get that corrected to 6%, and because that's how it reads, because you're the listing broker is getting the money and they're sharing it unilaterally through the MLS. They're declaring in the MLS what they're sharing to the buyer's agent. No. So the question is, MLS only shows what the buyer's getting. It does not show what the listing agent's getting. The only time the buyer's agent knows what the listing agent received is at closing. It's on the settlement sheet. And that's the day for me, and I just looked at the agent. I'm like, really? Because it was one of the hardest deals I had. It was a deal where I think I told you the guy lived upstate New York, didn't have cell phone, we had to FedEx everything. It was a nightmare of a deal. And I did a lot of work on that deal, but my client got his first home and it's all good, but it was a tough one. And then to find out that she walked away with 4%. Okay. So again, be very careful here, because years ago you had in the other compensation would be someone who's not represented. They might go and say, I want to buy that house. I'm not represented. I want the commission, because people put in the MLS that they paid 3% to a sub-agent or 3% to a non-represented person. Okay. So I've known people who've hired someone to search MLSs years ago for properties that that allowed money to be paid for non-agency. So as an investment, so they were getting that money off the sale price, right? So now, if you're doing variable rate, if applicable, the broker and seller agree to a variable rate commission to be paid as follows. Where this is most commonly used is if someone is doing dual agency, which we say no. Okay, but what they would do, they might say up here 6% and 3% to the buyer's agent. But then down here, they would say, however, if I represent the other side, I'm going to charge you a total of 4%. Okay? And that gets written here, that if dual representative, then 4%. So that sounds really great to the seller, because they're paying 2% less when they start looking at the money, but they're not realizing they're not being fully represented, and it can cause many problems, especially in this fast moving market. Because what that means is, let's say this is a house in North Arlington, and they're offering 5%, so 2.5 and 2.5. But if I bring the buyer, I'm going to do it for 3%. Okay, so the seller's going to be really interested at. We've got 20 offers coming in, and you call down through it, and all the offers, and let's say 5 of them are all almost identical to all the terms, whether escalation or not, but one of them belongs to my client. Right off the bat, my client has won for the most part, because the seller is paying less. They're paying 2% less in commission. So that's because that's part of your, when you do gross and net, it's going to come out. That commission comes into play there. So that has to be declared in MRIS. If someone does have a variable rate, if they're doing dual agency, then you want to look over and see if they're doing variable rate. And if they're not doing variable rate, that means they're competing the same as you. But if that variable rate is checked, that means they have a deal with the seller for less commission if they're doing both sides, okay? And years ago, Steve and I had to go to the arbitration board on a matter. The client we represented was exonerated from what she was accused of doing, but we did find out she was doing variable rate and not declaring it. Okay. She was no longer, she left our office. We asked her to, but that's where the trickery comes in. That's where, MLS keeps trying to tighten down the rules, because you're always going to have someone who's going to try to find a way to cheat somebody. Okay. And they're cheating their fellow agents. You're cheating one another. Okay. Same with the retainer fee here, you guys, just like with the buyer's side. If you're going to charge it, you have to charge it across the board. And then is it going to be subtracted from the compensation or not? So you might have a client who wants you to do a lot of marketing and you don't have it in your budget to do it. Then you might charge a retainer fee of $1,000 for a special situation. And I would just declare that below, that you're not doing it for every client, but for this client, for marketing. They're going to pay for upfront marketing, for example. Okay. Early termination fee. Different agents do different things here. Some do a flat commission, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, whatever your business plan is. Others do zero, but most people do actual expenses. So with your listing, it's pretty easy to keep track of your expenses. What did you spend on driving? Every time you drive to your client's home back and forwards, or putting up your signs, all that stuff, you're keeping track of your mileage. What did your marketing cost? What did it cost to put the sign in the yard?
So on that line, which is like, fellowship pay for the
Actual expenses.
national day.
Yeah, actual expenses.
And that's what we put in there.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Thank you, Jeff. Is that what we put in there then? Is just say actual expenses? We put that in there?
Yeah, some people put expenses, some people put actual expenses.
Okay.
The word actual, because you're giving them a detailed invoice.
Okay.
Okay, your question, Jeff?
Yeah, that answered one of my questions. The second one was, I mean, can't the agent sort of inflate those expenses, and how is that sort of quickly reconciled? I mean, does that have to go to arbitration as well in some cases, or I could see that happening.
I give an invoice. When the client I was telling you about, who argued about their square footage, we were back and forwards on their property price. I told him it was overpriced. They had a pool. They insisted that, because they had lived in that neighborhood for a long time. We're back and forwards on that. And so, long story short, the husband wanted to hire an aggressive agent. He sold it for the price I suggested from the very beginning, but let's not go into that. But anyway, so in my listing, I had actual expenses. Okay, when they called me for the meeting, I had put it on an invoice. So the pictures that I paid for, on my mileage, my signpost, my signage, my marketing, all that was listed in my business plan. I pay myself $50 an hour. Took me an hour and a half to put the listing in, upload the pictures, okay? So I put all my actual expenses in there, presented them with the invoice, and they cut a check to the brokerage for that amount of money, okay?
Okay, cool, thanks.
You can do that. You can put actual expenses or maximum 1,000, or you just put a flat fee, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. You can, it's a negotiation between you and the seller, but it's your business plan. So one or the other. A lot of agents use expenses. Some just use a flat fee. It's gonna cost you 2,000 for us to get out of the deal. Now I want to tell you guys, when you're doing this, you need to make sure that your listing agreement is as tight can be. That means there is no mistakes. Okay. About a year or so ago, an agent had a flat fee in here of a couple $1,000s, but what they had done was up where it says the price of the home, because it was a couple months in advance, they had put TBD, to be determined. Okay, contract law says has to have a start date, end date, a price. Okay, some of the other things can be considered typos, but those three things cannot be. And so a judge would have thrown it out. They would not have gotten their, it ended up being a negotiation. Another agent took over and helped out. But so be very careful, okay? Make sure if you're going to put some actual money in there, especially a significant amount, then yeah, right. Okay.
So Deb,
Yes.
sorry, real quick. So the price that you put in initially when you're first writing this listing agreement is sort of just a placeholder, but by contract law, it's got to be there, even though the house might sell for something completely different.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, thanks.
So I took a listing almost 18 months in advance. Okay, because the family engaged me. They wanted to know what needed to be done in the house, made a plan for what to be done, and so that they could talk to me and get professional advice and stuff. They wanted to do that. So we didn't know what was going to sell for that far in advance. So we took the high point in the market in their area, and we said that the house will be on the market for this amount of money or less. Okay. But then when it came time to actually put it in the MLS, we did a listing amendment to define what the actual list price would be. Okay. Right. We just do a listing amendment. Yeah. So that's when you're going to put it, that's when you're doing it far in advance. When you're doing it just a week or two ahead of time, you pretty much know what the sales price is going to be. Although you could be meeting your client Saturday and you're signing a listing agreement and you need to do some research on things that they've put in the house versus the neighborhoods. You really need to do a good comparable. So it could be a situation where just a few weeks away, or there's a house that's closing next week in that neighborhood and you want to wait and see what it closes for. Okay, then you might say X amount of money or less. And then with a listing amendment, you can then, right before you put it on the market, then you put exactly what the listing price will be. Okay. Because, sometimes.
Sorry for being a
Go ahead.
here. I don't mean to ask a dumb question, but I mean, so does the listing agreement that the listing agent has with the seller have to be updated to reflect the latest, greatest listing price, or does it just have to be filled out one time with the understanding that that price is going to change over time to be most current?
No, it needs to, when it goes in the MLS, it needs to match what the listing agreement says or the amendment says. And then every time it changes, you have to amend it with an amendment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you put, let's say let's say your seller's market becomes a buyer's market, or you've overpriced it. Like in my case with, you just couldn't convince them. And I learned a lesson there. I got to tell you, I took that, and because she was a friend, she was a relative of one of my mom's friends. I didn't know them, either party. I should have been stronger in my belief with them, and not let her run roughshod over me in her views, because I was a professional and knew what I was saying was correct. And my only vindication would be that that's what they sold the property for, was the original price I gave them almost 2 years after the fact. But just to know that you have to, whatever you put in the MLS, there has to be documentation stating that that's what the buyer and seller, that's what the seller and the listing broker has agreed upon. Okay. There's always a track record. Your documents stack. So the oldest on the bottom, newest on top. So when an amendment comes in, because you have to go up or down, maybe you put it on the market and you find out the house next door sold for 10 grand more and appraised, then you might want to put it on higher type thing. So it could go higher or lower, but you have an amendment that says that. It's a listing amendment, and then it goes on top. If you're stacking your documents legally, it's bottom to top. So whatever's on top is the most recent, okay, of any changes. So if anybody were laying everything out on the table to look at a timeline, they should be able to read your story, okay? Okay, so confidential information, we've talked about that. You don't go around telling secrets. except if you know there's a defect. That's not a secret, okay? It's not confidential, okay? So authorization to disclose offers. Now I want you guys to listen up here, especially when you're representing a buyer. This comes into play for you, but as you represent sellers as well. In response to inquiries from buyers or cooperating brokers, broker may not disclose without seller's authorization the existence of other written offers on the property. If seller does give such authorization, seller acknowledges that the broker and the seller's associates must disclose whether the offers were obtained by the listing agent or another member of the listing broker's firm or by a cooperating broker. Okay, so in this day and age of multiple offers, the idea is, yes, your seller should authorize this. And you explain to them, the reason we want to authorize to disclose offers is that when people are calling on the day that we put it online, it comes up active and they're calling, do you have any offers? And do you have any offers? No, I don't have any offers in hand. I've had 3 calls and people say they're going to make an offer. Great, I've told them the truth. Okay, now, if I know that 2 of them are from my office, I'm obligated to say only if they have them in hand. Okay, so then if someone calls and says, do you have any offers? I said, I have 3 in hand. We're going to look at them tomorrow night at 5 p.m. And oh, by the way, 2 are from my office. Okay, because it says we have to disclose that. We're from the same broker. Okay, online it tells them that I'm not a dual agent and there's no variable rate. Okay, so there's no worry there. So then what someone can say, they can say, well, are your offers at list price or above? Now there's nothing that precludes you from saying yes. There's nothing that precludes you unless your seller says they don't want you to. You can say, oh yeah, so this one's a VA at such and such, you know. You can say that. You can certainly say that. You can give them terms because then they can decide, especially if they have a buyer who says, look, my daddy told me never to offer list price. I want to come in 10 grand below. And you're saying to that buyer, but this is a seller's market. These homes are going to escalate. They're going to come in 25,000 below. I don't care. I don't care. I want 10,000 below because that's what my daddy told me I should always do. You can't get past what daddy and mommy tell you. Okay. Sometimes it's the hardest thing to get past because that's real estate of years ago. Okay. They don't understand that it's a seller's market. They don't understand escalation. They don't understand that people are willing to pay more for a home than it's going to appraise for because of where we live. It's just not conceivable, especially when they're from middle America. It does not compute. Southern Virginia, it does not compute, okay, at all. You know, I've had family members who've had homes 4 times bigger than my house, and my house cost 5 times more than theirs when I lived in Falls Church. You know? And so they just don't understand it. So you've got to get past those prejudices sometimes. Yes.
One, why do we have to say that somebody else is from our office? Just so that I don't know.
Because it would mean they would have some unfair advantage, perhaps.
Okay. And then secondly,
So the question was, why would we have to disclose if the person's from our office, as if they would have some unfair advantage?
and then so as far as like, say you come across Josh with $10,000 less, it's like disclosing you have offers, you know, 5% over or whatever. Could I don't know how like is that something that the agent can take back to their client and say, well, except you got a whole bunch here that are 20,000 more, you're not going to win. Is that I can't word what I'm trying to.
Well, so Samantha's question is, you know, you talk to a listed agent and they say they have offers that are 20, 25,000 over list price, and you've got a buyer who wants to offer 10 grand less. Yes, you go back to your buyer and you tell them that. And I have known people who have had to write offers for 10 grand less because their buyer will not allow them to not do it. You represent the buyer and you do it. So it's an exercise for the buyer. They have to fill out the paperwork, you have to send it, and they get rejected. And
But can you tell him, like she say, okay, I will do for you, but you are not going to win because there is bigger over there.
right, and they'll say, well, maybe they like my, yeah. And so what will happen, this just happened last week, well, maybe they'll like my financing better. Or now one case, they said, well, we're paying all cash.
Yeah,
Okay, right, we're paying all cash. Well, the seller still turned down the all cash. It was 10 grand less. They went with the conventional that closed in 3 weeks and made 25,000 more.
At the end of the day, the seller's just gonna commit their cost stuff.
Right.
So it's not.
Right. So years ago, I had a listing, my next door neighbor, he had moved back down to the mountains and his daughter lived next door to me. And we listed his property and I told him, it's 6%. He goes, still 6%? I'm like, what? Now this man was older gentleman. And he says, well, it was 6% in 1962. You mean the agents haven't got raises since then? And I was like, because that's when he bought the house, it was 1962. And I'm thinking, yeah, no, we haven't. I should have said it's 7%. So it was one of those situations. His daughter did not want to move, and but he needed her. He wanted to sell the house. It was the right type of market in Pemmon Hills, and so this was before the coming soon rules changed. So at that time, you could put up a coming soon sign, and it wasn't on the MLS yet. This is before they had coming soon on the MLS. And as long as you showed anyone and everyone equal access to the property, you could do it. So I said to him, I said, let's work with your daughter and let's offer to open the property up and she can sit there on the couch, not say a word, but for 2 hours on a Wednesday afternoon from 2 to 4, we'll just, anyone who calls us on the sign, we'll give them that. We're not going to advertise it. We're just going to say, if anyone calls on the sign, we kept a log, we let them all know. So we had all these people show up. And most of them came without their agents, okay? And so by that next day, by 2 o'clock the next day, we had 10 offers, okay? 5 were cash, 5 were various varieties of loans, okay? So I told the agents, I said, everything has to be to me by 2 o'clock because I am meeting the client at 6 o'clock in Charlottesville. And so I have to have time to print everything off. And we took all 10 contracts with us. I showed them to the client. I said, these 5 are cash, these 5 are, loans. He says, well, throw the loans out right away. I don't even want to look at them. Okay, here are the 5 that were cash. Okay, and what were the top ones? So we had top 3 that all offered the same amount or had escalations. And then so we called all 5. Told them the situation, and we gave them all 15 minutes to talk to their client and send me a text stating their offer in a text so that we could do the changes there at the table and let him decide. We're going to do it that night. And so, back and forwards with this couple people. And so, again, this was after the market had crashed. So it wasn't even the height of the market. It wasn't even the seller market, but because it was Pemmon Hills. So they offered to no home inspection, no appraisal, and the highest one, so we wrote everything up. He signed and initialed it. So as I got back to Northern Virginia, I scanned it over to the agent and got it signed, okay? Now what happened in that deal is that the seller, the buyer, their CPA said, oh, money's cheap. You should get a loan for half of it. They didn't tell us. It was closing in 3 weeks. Then their lender wanted a termite done and all this stuff. Well, we did close. We told them they better show up at the settlement table because they had no financing contingency whatsoever. They would have had to amend it. They would have had to change it, and they didn't. So, so they had to show up. But that's where, you're just fully displaying out to everybody. While I was contacting those who had the cash offers, my business partner was contacting those that had the loans and letting them know that we had all cash offers, that theirs was being rejected, and that we would send them formal rejections when we got back into town, But
So they say switch and they're like, just kidding, we're all cash. You're technically full, right? They violate the contract.
well, her question was, in my case, when they went to a loan, my sellers could void the contract. They couldn't void the contract unless the buyer didn't perform.
I guess is that specific performance because they're not paying cash now, they're going to the contract.
right? Well, they had to close on time.
Okay.
But yes, I could, the seller could compel them. Yes. You have to disclose. When we get to the contract, we'll go more in depth on the financial. Okay, so we're here on paragraph 15. We're not going to talk about fair housing, so we're going to stop here on page 6. We'll pick up on relocation and finish out this on Thursday. So for those of you who have not done your homework for the listing agreement, which is all but 3 of you, because Jeff did his contract instead of his listing agreement. So go back, guys, and do this, okay? If you can't find these documents in Command, I know they're in the middle of upgrading some of these things here. The ABA and Cyber, it is here in your homework.
Okay, so you said do the whole listing package.
Do the whole listing package, yes. Send it to Shannon if you're in Falls Church or Fredericksburg. Send it to me if you're in Kingstown, okay? Make yourself the seller. If you need a property, send me an email and I will send you a property to do the research on. I'll send you a tax record and even an old listing agreement, an old listing so you know what's in the property, so you can properly fill out the conveyances. Any questions?
Can I make up the conveyances?
I'm sorry?
This is Alicia. Can I make up the conveyances? That's what I did.
Yeah, you can make
Within
them up.
mine.
Me too.
You can make them up, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But if you make them up, make sure you have all the right addenda that go with it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Any other questions?